When did CM Punk show up in Chicago and was asked to leave by Vince?
That was back in May. In fact, we're going to come to it straight now. The backstage incident where he was thrown out of the Raw backstage in Chicago. Is it the Allstate Arena in Chicago?
Yep, Allstate.
Yeah. And waited. I'm sorry. So apparently he said it wasn't a big deal. He talked to a few people after talking to Jason Jordan, who at one point was briefly Kurt Angle's son for some reason. And then he got injured and then he became an agent. And then Bailey ended up being the one to invite him, I think, backstage to the show. Talks to a few people, nods at Triple H, and then Vince McMahon, who was operating through Zoom remotely, gets wind of it and then makes the call to throw him out. Tony Khan's reaction, apparently, to this was very negative and, to top AEW brass. And Punk, quotes, said the word that he heard more than any other was betrayed. As in, Punk had betrayed AEW by going backstage to a WWE show. Is that is that heavy-handed for you, or?
Hey, it's a wrestling business. He didn't have a non-compete.
Well, he wasn't competing. He was just visiting friends. He wasn't going on TV or anything.
Yeah, but I'm saying, it was a non-compete means that, they could interpret that way. He went to the show and people picked up on it. Fans took a picture of him and everybody saw him standing out in the parking lot talking to one of The Rock's cousins, I guess. What was her name?
Oh, was it Tamina?
Yeah, talking to her. Then he went in the building for a while, right?
Yeah, and then he was.
Then they asked him to leave because Vince didn't want any trouble with AEW, like they're tampering, like they're tampering with a talent. But he does have something in his contract about that. But
at this point, I don't even know if AEW or Tony Khan had reached out to CM Punk after the injury. I think they probably had by that point, but we'll get to this later. But after,
but I thought CM Punk, when he went there, he was still actively working for AEW.
Yeah, he was still under contract with AEW, but this was in that very long period in between him injuring his triceps, brawl out, and then he was on the shelf for 9 months. So this was during the point he was still on the shelf in like May, I think. Punk says again and again that Tony Khan is not a real boss and that he's a clown and a joke, and that AEW isn't a real business because it's not concerned about ticket sales or booking or compelling storytelling or making a profit. Simply, Tony puts matches together that he wants to see, and then he gauges the success of his business by star ratings or cagematch.net fan voting. Dave Meltzer rebutted on Wrestling Observer Radio that building a company over putting matches together that he wants to see is not a crime, which it isn't a crime, but it's not really that great of a comeback either, to be honest. Punk says that what works on indies doesn't work nationally, maybe in bits and pieces, but not all the time. And this has been proven again and again with AEW because they keep they return to markets and they sell less tickets every time. So whatever it is, they are not giving fans what they want.
Well, something's wrong there. So I people know how I feel about it, but he needs to be a boss. He needs to be in charge of everything. Now, the bad boy at the moment, Vince McMahon, was in charge of everything. So if you had a bitch and you wanted to talk to anybody, don't talk to an agent. Don't talk to somebody else. You got to go directly to Vince. Of course, a lot of times you're blocked from going to Vince because people figure out what you're going in there for. That was Bruce Prichard's job, to run interference and keep guys away from Vince.
Or John Laurinaitis.
Say what now?
Or John Laurinaitis, because, talent VP. Yeah.
And it would be stopped there because they damn sure wasn't going to bother Vince with anything they considered less than critical. And I don't know, the only thing that was critical, I think, Told this story before. I was trying to talk to him, and I think it was in Chicago, and Punk, he waited all day, and they went into that Vince's office, and they talked this whole time, still didn't work it out. But at least Punk followed protocol. He followed the chain of command until he got to the top guy, but nothing changed. So what else was he going to do?